So that's it. I just completed the first week. The first week is over on the new school here, the new retreat in Bali. I'm pretty tired. I don't mind admitting. I'm maybe a little bit older than last time I taught martial arts in this full-time way. But it's been good. If you don't know what I'm doing, just as an update, let's try and get this mic right, is me and some others, me and Ronnie and then some others, some other teachers here, working together on a 5-year long retreat, essentially. It's 9 months a year for 5 years that we're teaching here in Bali. So the school, this is one of the school buildings. This is the Gong school, although at the moment we're teaching martial arts here because the other one's not ready. And then we have a second building that will be where the martial arts are based. So we have 2 school buildings, one group studying full-time martial arts, one group studying full-time Gong and meditation. Then, of course, there's some organic movement between those 2 schools, right? So me and a number of other teachers, maybe 5 others, 6 others, off the top of my head, are working together to run this full-time retreat. So students coming here are here 5 days a week. Monday to Friday, they're training from morning till afternoon. Soon they'll have evening classes as well, so it's quite intense. And then weekends off, and that's what we're going to do for 5 years. So while we're here, we have 3 different groups, really, because we have groups doing Gong, studying meditation and alchemy and Gong, Qigong, and those guys are looking at all the different aspects of internal work and then often coming in and out. Those guys often staying for a couple of months at a time or 3 months at a time. So we have a kind of natural changeover of people for the most part. Then we have the Tai Chi group, which some people here studying Tai Chi, which will be a rolling program, but then other people are coming in and out for a few months. So we've got this sort of organic flow, people coming in and out. They're coming to do, from within our school, coming to do Tai Chi for a few months or Qigong for a few months. A lot of people are coming for a couple of months, going home to their own countries, then coming back and sort of living between where they live and Bali now, which is, it's cool. It's nice having those people come in and out. But then there's a third group, which I hear constantly, solidly for the whole time. Some people are staying for a year. Some people are already aiming to stay for 5, but we'll see. But it's a bigger group than I thought. I was quite surprised. When we set this up, I thought, there's probably, handful, 7 or 8 that will stay for the whole time. Nope. Turns out it was like nearly 40 are deciding to stay for the entire length of the retreat or as long as they're able. So those guys are taking a different route through the arts because they are studying sort of the arts in a very complete fashion, or as complete as I can offer. So at the beginning, they're studying external martial arts, which is what a lot of the training was this week. So Mabu, horse stance, walking and stepping and learning how to straight punch and things like this, alongside also studying internal arts, beginning their study of Tai Chi, which is what we started this week. And then their evolution, if they stay for 5 years, will go through external arts into internal arts with Tai Chi and Bagua, and then Chinese medicine as well, probably alongside the Gong. So quite a complete package. They're going to be pretty busy. There's not much time. There's not much free time for them here. Even on weekends, I think they've got stuff to practice and recuperation as well, which is a major thing. So this is like the biggest teaching project I've personally undertaken. It's similar to periods of full-time training that I've done myself in different parts of the world. This is kind of my attempt to offer that program, to offer it to people who want to study. It's a really nice group. We got the first half of them here now. Who came for this month, and the next month the other half comes. So I've been getting to know them. Everybody seems really cool. They're really nice bunch of people. Quite a lot from Australia, which is unusual because normally we've been teaching in Europe, so it's a long way. So not normally had any Australians, but for the first time we do, and that's cool. So a really nice group from all across the world come here to study martial arts at the center. And of course, they're also getting used to, some of them have never been to Asia, some of them have never left their own country before. So it's cool watching them get used to life in Southeast Asia and all of the chaos that comes with living essentially in a town in the middle of a volcanic jungle, which is basically where we are. So it's good, it's great. And, I think everybody will have fun. But it's funny having got to the end of the first week, because I started the week by asking them, sort of finding out a bit more about what they want to study and chatting with them. And then, of course, I dived straight into external martial arts training. So we had the first lesson was, first martial arts training lesson was 2.5 hours on Mabu, on horse stance. looking at the nature of it and how to structure it properly so that it builds elasticity and sit into it so it's not like a contractive exercise, and how to move in that stance and things like this. And then we had another 2.5 hours on the straight punch that forms the muscular connection for both a jab and a cross, that kind of practice. Alongside also learning how to release the weight and open the body for Tai Chi training. And then right now upstairs, I'm in the downstairs and they're all training up there at the moment. They're going through, it's the end of the week, so they've got their recuperative couple of hours of Qigong right now with another teacher. Doesn't sound that recuperative. I can hear them banging on the floor, so maybe it's more physical than I thought the lesson was going to be for them. I thought they were on recuperation, but maybe not. So yeah, that's it. And the end of the first week. So I'm just wanting to chat about how that went, really. And it's funny because, I grew up with martial arts and I've been doing them for a long time, and I see the benefits of them, certainly martial arts training. Even though my main interest this day is Neigong and alchemy, for sure, the basis that I had in martial arts helped me out a great deal. But it's been really funny going back into a long-term retreat because, of course, I've just come out of 2 years of COVID, and then what has it been, a year since COVID, something like that? But whatever, it's been a long break in my standard teaching. So during that time, at the start of that period, at sort of start of 2020, end of 2019, wasn't it? I decided to focus largely on meditation and internal work, and that ended up with me coming to Southeast Asia during the lockdown period and spending almost a year just focused on that, nothing else. So it's funny. I did, I overcome several hurdles in my meditation and my alchemy that I wanted to get past, and the Neigong and understanding Qi. But I notice it when I go back into martial arts teaching now, because of course during that time I practiced my martial arts forms and sequences, but the body development went onto the back burner for sure. And after a week of teaching, it's like, okay, yeah, I remember martial arts teaching, training is quite hard work, I didn't feel it as much as some of the people I'm teaching, of course, because their bodies maybe have never done those kind of shapes. But yeah, it reminded me it's going to take me a couple of weeks at least to get back into the rhythm of martial arts teaching, especially because I'm naturally quite an intense person, so if I teach, I can't coach, I have to do. And the problem is that when you're doing and you have to demonstrate, you can't demonstrate half-assed. It's a funny thing when you teach, like when you're in a class, say you're doing 2 hours of a punch, same punch over and over again, which is very much how I teach. I'm very repetitive. I like to get people doing the same thing over and over and over again, which mentally there's a reason for that, because I want them to overcome boredom and I want them to develop discipline. And I think those two are kind of diametrically opposed. You can't have discipline if you still give in to boredom. And that's very much the early stages of martial arts training for me. It's like we have to override that mechanism so that if you get bored, it doesn't matter. Boredom is like a little child tugging at your sleeve because it wants sweets, and you don't want to give in. You don't want to give in to that child, or because it's bad for it. You have to overcome this feeling. So we sort of working through that training, and then if you're in there for 2.5 hours, of course, what happens is people go hard, and then they go soft, and they go hard, and then they get a bit tired, and they take it a bit easy, and then they go hard. That's it. And your job as a teacher is to sort of motivate them to keep doing it properly, push, drive, get this technique correct. But of course, when you're on the stage in front of everybody demonstrating, you can't do it half-assed. You have to do it full pelt. So you realize that by the end of a class, you've done a lot of full pelt techniques into the air when you're demonstrating something like the punches or whatever. So yeah, it's been hard work. But it's a challenge I really like. I really enjoy that challenge of teaching something like martial arts. And I think that it's probably, for me, this 5 years, this will be the last time I do these kind of intense retreats, teaching them. I've done them before. We used to teach 3-month to 4-month long things in Sweden in the forests years back. That was full-time martial arts training, morning till night. And I've always kind of done those during the summer, and even in recent years I've done Neigong for a month retreats in the summer. So these kind of full-time retreats, but I think this is probably the last one. It's like I've done these 3-month ones, I think it's 1 month, but I think this 5-year retreat is the last one. And I realize by the time this finishes, I'll be 47, 48 years old. I'll be coming up to 50, which doesn't mean that I can't do martial arts, of course, but it probably means that I'm not going to have the motivation I wouldn't have thought to teach full time in this kind of setting, this kind of retreat setting. I would imagine my teaching will probably become a bit more relaxed and focused on the more internal or spiritual meditative side of the training. I would imagine. I think that's the natural evolution for the path. So this is kind of like, just before a candle goes out, it flickers, and that's what this retreat feels like for me. So I'm, going through in this and getting to do the training with people. And it was interesting trying to explain the point of martial arts training to people who aren't, I think it's fair to say, it's not a criticism, but I think to say they're not natural martial artists. Some of them are, actually. Some of them have backgrounds in Muay Thai and things like that here, and I think there's an MMA guy and some people like that. But on the whole, most people here are more inclined, I would say, naturally towards Qigong or Tai Chi or meditation, which is funny. It's the opposite of me. I'm more externally inclined. That's kind of who I am. So I've had to kind of overcome that inclination towards external training in order to study the introspective arts and the internal arts. And it's funny, it definitely doesn't play to my natural extrovert, quite a sort of physical self. I like using my body. So over the years, I've had to kind of overcome that hurdle and do something that's not natural to me. I'm not a natural introspective person. But it's quite funny teaching people who are naturally a bit more introspective than me, where the internal arts are more natural, and trying to explain to them the point of doing the opposite, that on the whole, something that is not natural for them. Trying to explain the sort of psychology of why we do the martial arts. And that's been really, it reminded me how much fun it is, and what a challenge it is. Because when you first start teaching something like martial arts, like it struck me when everybody's here, everybody has a very different view of what Eastern martial arts training is. Everybody will have a different view. Some people it will be what they've seen on TV, kung fu movies. Some of the people it's about fighting. Others in their mind, they have this idea it's about spiritual growth, some for health, some for curiosity. Some people are very style focused, the ones that always talk about the difference between this system and that system and this system and that system. And different brains have different ideas, and nobody really knows. I don't think there's a shared idea of what martial arts training is about. So it's quite funny that when you get people turn up to a martial arts retreat, you kind of realize, or I realized, that everybody's here for a different thing, like, because they don't even have a shared idea of what martial arts are. And you can't give an objective definition. You can't, because they're so multifaceted that it's almost impossible for there to be a consensus for what Chinese martial arts on the whole are about. And you can see that online. You're watching this on social media, I'm sure, or listen to this on social media, so you're familiar with social media and the debates that go on. And there's some that are determined it's about fighting, and others that are determined it's about a cultural thing. Chinese martial arts are an expression of Chinese culture, and other people it's a spiritual thing, or it's health, or there's no consensus. Nobody agrees. And sport fighting and, all these different ideas. So you can't possibly hope to encapsulate everybody's understanding of martial art within one definition. You can't really do that. So all I decided to do with this in the end was I had to present to people how I viewed martial arts and what I viewed the point of them to be. And that was kind of how I opened. And that was interesting because I never really, I've hinted at it and I have an idea, but I've never fully kind of expressed that verbally, just said what I view the point of martial arts to be and then to see. And then watching the reactions on the faces of people who are there to learn, to see whether that's sunk in or whether they get you or whether it's what they want. And, be interesting to see, because if you don't gel with your teacher's idea of what the art is about, obviously it's going to be difficult, because maybe, say for example, I'm not interested in sport fighting. That doesn't interest me very much. I think it's really cool. I'm definitely not down on it. I'm not one of these people that's down on something because I don't do it. I think that the level of skill involved in it is, and bravery and all those kind of things, is very admirable. I definitely do. But it's not my personal interest, So say, for example, I have an idea of martial arts and someone is there for sport fighting. Obviously, I'm going to be a bad fit for them because my training is not geared towards that. So it'll be interesting to see as time goes on whether people stay or leave or whatever. And I think that will be natural. Some people will decide that I'm not the right teacher for them, in which case they should not stay too long in this retreat because they won't get what they want. And other people, their desires or wants will align with mine. And I think those are the ones that will flourish during the retreat. So yeah, exciting stuff. So what I was trying to explore, exciting for me, maybe not for you, I don't know, but I was trying to explain to them that my take on what a human being gets from martial arts, especially external martial arts at the beginning, is quite important in that I believe it's like my take on it is a human being. Certainly the ideal I had when I was younger, maybe it's from myself or maybe it was something that was instilled into me from my family or early teachers, I don't know. But my ideal really of what a person should strive for within martial arts is certainly to a certain degree of toughness and robustness. I think that's important. As a person, I want to be tough. I want to be robust. I want to be strong. These are not traits I don't want, because the opposite of strong, robust, and tough would be sort of weak and frail and, easily affected by life. Like, that's the opposite. If I'm not strong, tough, and robust, that's the opposite that arises. So I want those qualities. But I also, alongside that, want kindness, and I want compassion, and I want understanding and empathy and all of these things as well. I'm trying to aspire to develop those qualities. Now, I think that those two often go hand in hand, because as I was trying to explain to guys this morning, like when you're doing the training, when you start to get tired, maybe you're on your 500th bloody straight punch or your 200th front kick and you don't even know why you're doing it anymore, and of course you get tired and your body's fatigued and your muscles are aching, you're covered in sweat, the room smells, guy next to you smells, it's just not a pleasant environment, and you're kicking and your brain's going, what am I doing this for? That's the point when all of your sort of worst qualities come to the surface, isn't it? That's when, or certainly that's what I found during martial arts training, that you confront yourself. For some people, they can kind of ride the adrenaline, or they like pushing themselves, so that excitation comes up. But for other people, it's not the same. So if they are, naturally a bit of an angry person, then when they get tired and their body is put under pressure, they get more, there it is, up comes their anger. If they're quite a sort of jealous or bitter person, that will come to the surface and they start to get jealous or embittered about people around them. If they suffer with paranoia, it'll get worse when they're tired, definitely. If you're self-loathing and your self-esteem is bad, that will be a lot worse when you're tired, and you see it during martial arts, and when you're teaching and you watch people as they get tired, you see their faces kind of go like thunder, and their faces go dark, and you can see with newer people, they kind of start to get lost inside their thoughts. And it's very self-sabotaging that as you get tired, that worst part of yourself comes to the surface. And this to me is one of the sort of first benefits or trainings really that comes through martial arts is the discipline that you have within your mind, not to push through it, but to recognize that, okay, this quality is arising in me because I'm tired, because I'm being pushed. But I'm going to acknowledge it, but I don't wish to get drawn into it. I don't wish to get sucked into it. I don't wish to make it who I am. And I think that some people don't like that kind of training, They would think it would be psychologically damaging or difficult. But to me, that's where martial arts training comes in. It's because, look, I feel this way. I'm tired. So therefore, all my dislike for people in the world is coming up, and these bad feelings. I'm angry towards the teacher and things like this, and angry towards myself, but I've got a task to do. I've been told to do this technique and I'm supposed to repeat it, so I'm just going to keep going. The more I separate my mind from that, after a while, a couple of things happen. One is you learn to think, okay, actually, I don't have to act according to my emotional state. I just don't. That feeling can arise in me, but it doesn't have to change who I am. I can still carry out a task. Now, already for me, for a lot of people, especially younger people, I think that's a lesson that is beneficial. It certainly was for me when I was younger, that actually if I have a task to do, I can still do that task no matter how I feel. If there is a responsibility I have and I feel grumpy, it's possible for me to separate myself and acknowledge, okay, part of me is grumpy, but that's not relevant to what I'm doing right now. So I'm going to see this task through. I'm going to see this responsibility through. And I think that's important for life, because if every single time you feel a certain way, a negative feeling stops you from doing something, well, that's going to be a major problem in life, isn't it? Because it's going to be difficult for you to achieve anything. If you're subject to how you feel, your negative feelings all the time, that's not good. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing as well is that, of course, you felt that way because you got tired. That's where it comes from. It's like if you've got an abundance of energy, if you sleep really well and you wake up and you've just had 2 weeks laying by the beach in Honolulu or something like that, and you feel amazing, it's easy to be kind. It's super easy to be kind, I meet someone in the street, who's a bit rude, and it's okay. I can shower them with love and smile at them. Someone cuts me up in the road, and I don't worry. I wave to them. It's okay. Someone does something rude to me, it's no problem because I feel great. So therefore, that kindness is radiating out of me. But what if I'm tired? What if I'm burnt out? What if I'm exhausted? You try to sustain that kindness. It's a lot harder. It's a lot difficult. Like when you're exhausted and you're thinking, right, got to be kind, and someone cuts you up, there comes that grumpiness. Because your energy levels and your ability to sustain kindness go hand in hand. To me, like spending a life around the spiritual scene, I think it's quite funny because I met lots of sort of spiritual teachers, especially when I was younger. And I don't mean like actual realized ones. I mean sort of, people who are just in the scene exploring and sort of, what would you call it? I don't want to be rude, but kind of lower level. I don't mean that. I don't know. You can switch that for a politically correct term. You know what I mean? Like people on the lower echelons of the spiritual scene, amateurs or something, who had these really cushy lives. They had these really easy lives. They had this nice house and they had lots of money from what they were doing, and they'd made money from a couple of books they'd written, and they were cool and they were chilled. And then they were lecturing all these people who had 9-to-5s and 3 kids and a mortgage they couldn't pay. And they were lecturing about how they should be kind and how they should be compassionate. I'm thinking, well, and I was in the room often. I was one of the guys in the lecture hall listening to this spiritual teacher, guru, whatever, speaking, telling me about how you should be in life. And I'm thinking, yeah, but like I'm fucking exhausted. You know what I mean? I've had to work X amount of hours and deal with all this shit in my life to get the money to come along to your seminar, to have you sit there and berate me about how bad I am acting when I don't have the energy to act nice. I'm exhausted. So I'm constantly at the end of my threshold. Whereas you sat up there on the podium has this really cushy lifestyle where you live in your ashram and you've got everything you need. You get good sleep, good food, good practice. Everything is okay. It's very easy for you to sustain kindness. See how easy that kindness is to sustain if you were also burnt out and exhausted. At the same time, I remember a Qigong teacher, a famous one in years gone by, and he wrote a thing saying, if you're ever stuck in traffic and you're feeling grumpy and you're stuck in gridlock, don't worry, just relax. Sit, breathe, do some Qigong in your car. And it's really funny because this teacher was in a warm state in America. And I remember reading it thinking, yeah, but I live in the UK where it's cold and my car's like shit and falling to bits. And I'm half dying from the fumes because something's wrong with the exhaust. So every time I turn the engine on, it gasses me in here and the window won't close and it's freezing in the UK. So there's rain coming in through the window and fucking windscreen wipers don't work. And I'm driving this old banger because I've got no money. So when I'm stuck in traffic, it's like a gassed ice box. You know what I mean? You want me to sit there and meditate? It's just so different, the situations, the circumstances. So I think this is really where, if you understand what I'm rambling about, this is what I think where martial arts come in, because it's easier to sustain that quality of kindness or decency when you've got lots of energy. But of course, as you train martial arts, that threshold for energy goes up, your stamina goes up, the robustness that you have goes up. So when you first start training, you do an hour and you're tired, you do a day and you're tired, you're already fatigued. A day's training kills you. 2 weeks into the training, oh, actually you find I'm not so bad. I've got a bit more energy. 4 weeks into the training, a year into the training, it's like actually an abundance of energy. I don't get tired when I do this because I'm used to it. I'm used to pushing. So what happens is your threshold for tiredness goes down and then the rest of life becomes less tiring. So it doesn't affect you quite in the same way. So it's easier to sustain your kindness simply because your energy levels are higher, your toughness is higher, your resolve is higher. And that is, to me, is a great boon. Like, that's huge. That's massive. I can sustain my kindness because my energy reserves are higher, so I'm less likely to be in that negative, burnt-out state. And then the other side of it, of course, is to keep doing what I'm doing no matter if I feel negative about it, then that means I can separate myself from that a bit more. And the martial arts teaching tells me that as well. So my martial arts training, has helped me with my Neigong teaching no end, because if you teach something like Qigong or Neigong, for example, you don't feel perfect every day. Some teachers might pretend that's the case, but I don't believe them. There are days where things are shit. You know, if you're teaching often, there's been days where I've had to go and stand on a stage in front of a group. And first of all, I feel pressure about it. For some reason, especially if it's abroad. If I've traveled abroad to teach, I feel an extra layer of pressure. Don't know why. Just some psychological thing that probably shouldn't be there, but it's always the case, you know. I remember the first time I ever taught in America, I vomited in the loo before I went out. I had to have a chewing gum and go out on stage. I was so stressed, so nervous. And I've had days, where I felt ill. I've had food poisoning or jet lag, and I've had to teach. Or I remember one time I had to teach, and I had a phone call about 20 minutes before I taught saying one of my family members had just had a health emergency and gone into hospital. Nothing I could do, couldn't get to the hospital, so I had to teach. So, and lots of those things that happen. But you still have to do the same thing. You still have to be on the stage in front of the group teaching or working as a therapist or whatever you do. And the people, in my opinion, the people you are teaching should not know unless you choose to allow them to know. They should not know. They shouldn't know my mood. They shouldn't know that I'm having a bad time. They shouldn't know I'm sick. They shouldn't know I'm tired, because I've done enough martial arts training that I can separate the two from one another. So part of my brain acknowledges, oh, fuck, Damo, you feel like shit. But the other part of my mind is like, yeah, but I got a task to do, because that's the choice I've made in life. I've decided to be this person, so therefore I have to carry out the role, and I'll worry about how shit I feel afterwards. And that, to me, is an ability that comes from this kind of external training. So it was interesting watching in this first week how some of the people who are not used to this kind of training, I could see the dark sides of their nature coming up. There comes the anger flaring up, or the rebellion, or the unhappiness, and some people the self-loath. I feel bad about myself. The competition with others, like these negative things come up, and they increase psychologically as people's energy levels go down. And I think an important part of martial arts training is to, not berate people for that, not tell them off or anything, or do the standard martial art thing, isn't it? The stereotype, you're weak. Like, no. I think you have to acknowledge it. So we sat down and we talked about it and we chatted about it and say, look, this is what's going to happen. And just understand that while you're doing this kind of training, these kind of qualities are going to come up, but it's no problem. It's okay, because no matter how bad you feel, don't worry, the guy next to you probably feels something similar. But of course, you in your own head, you think you're the only one suffering and everyone else is fine, and that makes you feel worse. But it's not. It's a universal trait. And it's certainly normal for people when they're getting used to this kind of practice, this kind of like pushing their body. So yeah, that's funny. It just interesting for me that to teach martial arts and go through that. And normally when you talk through that process with people, with students, and explain it, they get it. People aren't stupid. Definitely nobody upstairs. It looks like I'm pointing to the heavens. The class is up there, right? Certainly nobody training up there is stupid. They're not stupid people. Hyper intelligent, chatting with them, super nice people. They understand. So it's good, because I think in martial arts teaching, one of the other errors is we just push. And I don't think that's the case. I think people are bright. So we need to sit down and discuss these things, and let's look at this issue that's arising and understand it. And then once we understand it, we underline it by then doing some more hard training, just to remind you, look, this is what is happening. This is what's coming out of the practice. And here it is again. And those kind of things, to me, this is the point of martial arts training to me, not the fighting. I think you do need to do some, because I think the fighting puts you in a controlled environment, at least, puts you under a certain degree of stress. And once again, can you sustain your composure under stress? Can you sustain your center while someone's trying to punch or kick you in the head or grapple with you without flaring up? And I know I couldn't when I was younger, like definitely not. Every time I had to spar or fight, whether it was in front of a crowd or whether it was on my own, not on my own, not fighting myself, but with another person, in private, or whether it was just within a class, which I did all different types of fighting, competitive and non-competitive, sparring with people, lots and lots. When I was younger, I could not sustain my center. I had a weird two reactions. I would be nervous before I started, always very, very nervous. Then during the altercation, I would get a weird enjoyment arose, which I knew was not healthy. Like I shouldn't have that level of enjoyment for violence, definitely not. And then rage, anger would come up inside me. And I'd have to try to sort of overcome that in this almost psychosis that would overcome me when I'm fighting. And I didn't want that, because often the fighting, I wasn't trying to kill the person. I was either competing with them, which is still not trying to kill them. I don't want the person dead, or they're my training partner, we're sparring, trying to learn with each other. So that kind of feeling wasn't helpful. And I had to learn to overcome that, and that did me no end of good, because if I can overcome the rage or the anger or the competitive, that extreme stress of someone trying to punch me and me trying to punch them, then actually in the rest of life, when people do things to you, it doesn't bother me that much. Like, it's okay. Someone's rude to me, all right, fine. Like, someone ripped me off and took my money recently. It's okay. It doesn't matter. Like, whatever. Because comparatively, compared to fighting, the stress is less, right? Like, martial arts and combative training are a metaphor for stress at its highest levels for me. So therefore, if I can detach from that stress and not experience it while I'm fighting and still retain my center and remain comfortable in that situation, then when confronted with a, comparatively lesser stress in life, it's low down on that stressor factor, then it doesn't impact me. And I think that is a major facet for martial arts training. Certainly when I have friends who aren't martial artists or people around me who don't do that kind of training, or even Qigong people or something, they're all well and good, they're cool. And then a little stress happens in their life, everything falls to bits, you know what I mean? The stress, the mind, the emotions all kicks off because their stress threshold is small. Whereas if you've done martial arts and fighting side of it, not just forms, then the stress threshold is bigger if you're good at that side of it. So therefore, all these little stresses, they don't even register. So you're able to deal with them in a more sensible and objective and kind and compassionate fashion, even when people are tricky. I think that's something that's helped me no end with Qigong teaching, because if I had just done Qigong, and people are pretty rude. Like, if you teach and you deal with the public, they're pretty rude. The things people write to you, they're rude. The things people say on courses, they're rude. Like, it's tricky, and there's always challenges and things like that. But I don't think they've ever really fazed me, because none of them compare to the stress that you're used to dealing with in a combative situation. And this is something I was trying to explain to the guys here. This is another point of the martial arts training for me. So let's call it your stress threshold goes up, so that you're able to retain your center and be who you are in difficult situations. What that will naturally lead to is more of a leadership type quality, whether you want to or not. It's like you try and force yourself to be in charge, but you will find you are. If there's a stressful situation and everyone around you is panicking, they'll start to look to you, because they'll look at you and they'll realize that person's not stressed, that person is still organized, that person is able to think objectively. So you end up becoming a center, like a rock for the people around you. And isn't that the point of martial arts training? Isn't that one of the sort of stereotypical traits we associate with the Kung Fu master, Kwai Chang Caine or whoever it is, and all the things we've all watched in the media, who was the centerpiece, the rock for their community, even if he was wandering from community to community at those difficult times. These are ideas we know, and yet not only are they ideas we know, they're ideas that we admire. Like, if we hear people talk about another person, the admiration we have for a stoic, rock-like person, that person's so good to depend upon, they're so dependable, they're so strong, they don't bow. And like, we admire those kind of people, and yet often we're not prepared to go through the process that leads you to become that sort of person. You're not going to become that sort of person by giving into your emotions and giving into things like boredom, which is a terrible human trait, and giving into all of these things that distract you and take away the discipline that prevent you from becoming that person. And that's where the martial arts training come in. This is why I have it before the internal training for the long-term students, the ones that are here for a long time. It's not before, it's alongside, actually. To be honest, they're doing internal training from the beginning. They're all doing alchemy, they'll all do a bit of Tai Chi, but their mainstay is to build those qualities into themselves. Because I think it's like, all the people I've met who are very good at internal training, who I would consider to be very good subjectively from my perspective, of course, whether it be Tai Chi or alchemy or Qigong, whatever it is, most of them, all of them, to be honest, have some kind of background that I can think of in external martial arts or external combat. And I don't think it's to do with a technique. It's not because they know how to make a fist better or something like that. I think it's because of these qualities that I'm talking about, the ability to remain stoic and centered while sustaining your kindness and your decency, maintaining your morality and your virtue and your stronger characteristics in the face of adversity, and even in the face of discomfort and tiredness, which is huge. That's a huge thing for a human being to achieve. And I think having those qualities translates across on some kind of subtle level to skill at the level of the internal arts as well. It's like if someone comes to Tai Chi training, I want to do Tai Chi. Okay, how old are you? 70. Okay, no problem. that's good. We can learn how to help you with your joints and your body, and this will have to be really good for you. 50, okay, no problem, that's good. 20, why? Why? Nothing wrong with it. You can do the Tai Chi, but I think it's an awful waste when someone comes to it at that age who doesn't also put themselves through some external training as well. I think that's wise. I mean, maybe it's different if it's like therapeutically you need something like Tai Chi or something like that. But if you're taking a longer picture, you're a dedicated person, you want to go through your life, I think that external training first can be invaluable, or at least alongside. I know people say don't do external training alongside your Tai Chi because it will prevent your development in it. Fair enough, but maybe there's more important things at the age of 20 or through your 20s or your early 30s. Maybe there's more important things than becoming the best Fajiner at that age. Maybe it's more important that you develop these kind of mental qualities of kindness and understanding that you can sustain in the face of pressure prior to really throwing yourself into those art. It's a long life. Why want to master that at the beginning? Build yourself up first. So that's just my thoughts at the end of the first week, really, which has been largely external training with some Tai Chi in it. What we did actually, if you're interested, we did a lesson on Mabu and stepping, footwork. We did a lesson on straight punching and the front kick we studied. And then internally we looked at some of the opening drills for Tai Chi in order to open the body and sink the Chi. We looked at getting the mass to the floor and then the open section of the form. We got quite a lot done, really. And then I sort of taught them the basics of stretching, how to mobilize the body properly. So yeah, a fair bit for a week, They got lots to practice. And it's really good seeing them because get to the end of the day, it's very telling, like when you finish a day, you teach a day of martial arts, you can always tell different types of students. Some of them are just exhausted. And I say, fair enough. If you're exhausted, lay down, man, get your energy back, go for a hot bubble bath, get some Epsom salts in there or something, like do what you need to do to recover. I have full sympathy for that group. But then you get some, especially younger ones, that have lots of energy left because of course they're fucking 20, aren't they? They've got bundles of energy. I did when I was younger, and those guys fall into two crowds. There's the ones that finish their training and they're desperate to do anything else. Do you know what I mean? I got to get out of here. And they don't say that. They enjoyed the martial arts training, but the rebellion in them is like, they got to go do something else. I got to get to a cafe. I got to get to a bar. Got to go do something. I got to go sightsee, and I got to do something. Do you know what I mean? And it's like the pent up desire to get away from the discipline. And then there's the other type of student that finishes a class and then wants to carry on. They're like, oh, well, I want to revise this now. I want to build it into my body. I want to do another hour or two. I want to sort of work this and figure out how it is. And I think that everybody falls into one of those three categories. Exhausted, want to get away and do something else, or carry on the training. I'm not anti any of those three outcomes, certainly. I think the people that want to get away and do something else, I can empathize. That's people that want a bit more balance in their life, perhaps. The people who are tired, I can definitely empathize with. And then that other group I can empathize with as well, because I was more that group because I had a real obsession. So often at the end of a course, when I was attending it, especially with the internal arts, I used to think, I've got so much energy left. I'd go out to the car park afterwards to practice more with the other mentally ill level of obsessives and things like that. And I get it. And it's been really nice to see that there's all three in this group. And I'm assuming they'll listen to this later. So all three groups are fine. Like, I'm totally fine with it. It's cool. You need to get balance if you need to, rest if you want to. But it's really nice that obsessive group's actually quite big. It's quite sizable. Whether they sustain it as they get tired, I don't know. But definitely there's a lot to work with there. There's a lot of potential. And I think that, this group, they're very coordinated. They're very keen. They're very intelligent. I think it'll be a good group. I think it'll be a good group. I have good feelings about this retreat, Before it started, I was a bit like, what have I done? What have I committed to? What am I doing? And I spoke to some of my friends, other martial arts teachers, also saying, what are you doing? 5-year full-time retreat? I'm like, yeah, I know, but I feel I want to, and I feel that I kind of almost a duty to do it a little bit. And also I like challenges. I like pushing myself. But it was right before it opened. I was like, what am I doing? But now it's opened and I've got to the end of the first week. I feel positive. I feel very positive about it. And I think people will do good things. And I think that some people who come out of this retreat at the end of 5 years, hopefully will be a good influence upon the martial art world, the internal arts world, and also their general communities. And all I can hope is I have even slightly a good influence upon them during this time. But we'll see if I still feel the same after a few more weeks. We'll see. Maybe I'll be so exhausted that maybe I will be the biggest hypocrite and all of my negative traits will have come out. Let's find out. So thanks, guys. Just wanting to give you an update and share my thoughts. Mostly share my thoughts with me, really. This is my end of week sort of contemplation, speaking to myself time. I just thought I'd include the camera in it as well. So again, sorry if these rambles are just irrelevant to you guys listening, but you can just skip them. You know, if you ever see a podcast and you want to hear the interview of the person I'm chatting with, because as you can see, I was supposed to have a guest, this one set up, but I ended up wanting to talk about this instead on this one. But you can just skip those and listen to me chatting with somebody, because these solo ones, that's what they're going to be. They're just me rambling on about my my random thoughts. Anyway, thanks very much. I'm going to go and take a couple of days off. No, I'm not. That's not true. I got to, over this weekend, get to the other building and make sure that the building project is going well, because it's not quite finished. And we need the other building ready for 3 weeks' time when a bunch more students turn up. So, yeah, busman's holiday. Thanks very much, guys.